Welcome back to Fresh Outlook. For the past month, we have been talking about Ukraine and Malaysia. Let's get an update first on Ukraine. This week, Russia's energy giant Gazprom doubled natural gas prices for Ukraine, piling more pressure on the country's economy, which is already on the brink of bankruptcy.
Ukrainian security officials are accusing ex-president Viktor Yanukovych of using hired killers, kidnappers, and thugs to terrorize and undermine the opposition.
What was planned as an anti-terrorist operation, which was in fact the mass killing of people, took place under the direct leadership of ex-president Yanukovych.
12 members of an elite riot police unit have been detained on suspicion of shooting protesters. A top security official says there was grounds to suspect that Russia's security service assisted their Ukrainian counterparts in suppressing anti-government protests.
On January 20th, transport planes from Russia landed in Gustomel and Giuliani airports. They brought 5,100 kilograms of explosive, special tools and additional weapons for the shooting and killing of our protesters on Maidan and next to Maidan.
Over 100 Ukrainians were killed in Independence Square in Kiev as they protested the corruption in the Yanukovych government.
And joining us again is Dee Beggy, Dr. Alexander Marescu, and joining us via Skype is Dr. Bart Rossi from Florida. Hello there, Dr. Bart. How are you?
Very good. Nice to be with you.
Well, we've been talking about Ukraine, obviously, for the past couple of weeks and even months now, and every week there seems to be something new to talk about. Now we're seeing these latest killings in Kiev, and we're seeing just these gas prices going up, and just so many things happening over there. Let's start with you, Dee.
Well, you know, I think Putin is just the devil, basically. And now he's talking about the fact that he's just going to freeze these people out. No, he didn't care. He just wants to take over more and more. Crimea is not the end. He's going to go as far as he possibly can. And he's already making the threats. He's just a big bully. And the people of Ukraine, I mean, they're suffering for it.
Oh, they're suffering terribly from it.
I mean, being killed. I mean, murder. I mean, you know, these people are dying now.
I mean, to have your gas prices double and to have, I mean, this country is already on the brink of economic disaster, if not already there. Dr. Marescu.
I would qualify a little bit the doubling of gas prices in the Ukraine. Firstly, there were tremendous state subsidies of energy costs. This is a relic of the Soviet Union, where effectively the people paid very, very little to virtually nothing. Energy costs were very strongly state subsidized. Secondly, gas prices and energy costs were already quite low, so the Ukraine carried on after independence. So doubling what was already quite small, yes, will have an effect. Is it going to have this crippling effect? We don't know until next winter.
Well, if they're going to freeze to death, I don't know. I'm sort of thinking that might be a crippling effect if they can't afford.
But it's just one measure, and it's just, we don't know what we're going to be talking about next week. And we're just, it just seems to be, you know, he's saying he's pulling out. This is not going to be, you know, he's not interested in Ukraine.
Yeah, sure.
Well, the thing is that Gazprom and Russia's economic pressure on the Ukraine is largely based on selling energy, primarily natural gas and oil, at very sub-market rates. So the question is it's a business deal ultimately. Okay, you don't want to play with us. This is a type of political pressure. Well, then you'll just have to pay what everyone else pays.
That's a lot of political pressure.
It's a lot
and
of
it instills
basic
a fear into people if they're going to be crippled economically. So let's weigh in with Dr. Bart on that one.
Yeah, you know, I think I said a couple of weeks ago that this is really a classic approach conflict in psychology. What do we do to really make a difference here? And I think that, you know, it brings back memories of Bush 41, when I think he effectively got a coalition together against Saddam Hussein, and he was very effective. I think, you know, we need to put as much pressure as possible on Putin, because it's a psychological conflict. We're not going to put troops on the ground. And I think the more nations we can get involved here to put the pressure on while the Ukraine is having problems, the more effective we will be psychologically.
And we are going to certainly be watching this situation over there in the next week or next week and months as we continue the show. Let's go to Malaysia now. Also on the international front pages, Malaysia's national police chief said that all 227 passengers have been cleared of any involvement. Now, he also admitted that what happened on board the plane may never be known. While the media needs to follow this story, should be breaking news 24/7. And we've talked about this over and over again.
CNN, I'm sorry. CNN, terrible right now. Every time you turn to CNN, it's about the plane.
Well, they just said that China found a ping, and this is breaking news.
Every minute.
And
I'm sorry, but I think Ebru TV is way better than CNN because at least there are different stories. I'm over
totally
CNN.
Agree.
It's 24/7 constantly.
No, if you read other news sources, I definitely strengthen my news intake using a lot of European sites, BBC, The Economist, and some from Germany.
And everybody's covering it, but it's not to the 24/7 cycle.
No, but this is not first front page news. Any sort of new tidbit of information that comes out, it gets plastered across a ticker like CNN is doing. Obviously, it's still important. There are ramifications for transportation safety, for cooperation, military and transportation authority cooperation. But ultimately, this is just a tragedy, and
I do think when we were here a couple of weeks ago, we talked about how the countries were coming together. Certainly, a great focus that a lot of the countries are still there and still coming together to look for.
CNN needs a fresh outlook. That's all I got.
Well, there you go.
Everyone needs a little fresh outlook in their life.
Well, we're going to turn to Afghanistan, where history is being made this weekend. Now, for the first time ever, people are voting for a new president in what will be the nation's first ever transfer of power through the voting booth. Now, President Hamid Karzai was chosen, of course, by Afghan leaders to head the country after the fall of the Taliban and won 2 elections, but he is now barred by 2 terms. So it's been quite a scene. I'm not sure if you saw some of the videos. They have 400,000 police officers to keep order there. They're taking ballots by donkey. I mean, it's incredible to see. But also, there is that promise when you see women going to the polls to vote. It certainly is quite incredible to see. Dee Dee, we start with you.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned it, Mia. I thought that was my favorite side, to see women be able to be involved. That's huge. So, that's a step in the right direction. And obviously, being able to have people have the democratic process, where Afghanistan has always been a problem, an issue. So, hopefully it'll work out. We'll see. We'll have to be positive.
We can't forget the 2, there was a journalist, of course, a German photojournalist who was also killed in yesterday's fighting. We can never forget them. But there has been some intense fighting, certainly, in the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, I suspect that this next round of presidential elections will have a certain degree of political instability and violence. Certainly, more violent factions will try to put their pressure on, and they'll try to protect or prevent some people, segments of the population, from voting. I'm pleased in a way that Karzai can't run based on term limits. He has proven to be, especially in the last 2 to 3 years, an erratic leader and someone the U.S. has had continually problems relying on. And there's just been also too many, not even rumors, it's documented cases of very, very deep corruption and collaboration with the Taliban. So this is hopefully a new chapter.
Well, certainly a balancing act over in Afghanistan. But was it a sign of promise for you, Dr. Bart, to see the women voting in Afghanistan?
I think it's a real sign of progress. And what I like is that the Afghans seem to realize finally that they need to take control of their own country. It seems like they do have the idea in their head now that we're leaving and they need to take over and be effective. And I really do like that.
And we're going to turn now, thank you, Dr. Bart, we're going to turn now to India, where an Indian court has ordered at least 3 men to hang after they were convicted of 2 gang rapes. Now, these are the first death sentences to be handed down for multiple sex attacks since the law was toughened this year. The question, does the death sentence prevent rapes in the future?
I'm for hang 'em high, because you know what? In India, they've had a terrible, terrible record of rapes. I hate the way their country has handled that. They've just let these rapists go. Good for them. I think there absolutely should be a death penalty for that. I mean, there are vicious rapes of these women, and the government just let it go. So finally, there's justice.
Well, it's the, of course, you could take the argument here in this country, too, in terms of if somebody's murdered somebody, does the death penalty prevent murder? I mean,
well, I think so, yes.
No, I mean, this is where I'll part company with Didi. Yeah, I'm in complete agreement that rape laws in India have just been really just not even considered in the courts, in the police. Indian women have generally a hard time socially. There are a lot of social pressures not to report rapists. We had a big case last year of the mass rape on a bus. Killed. Yeah, and the girl was ultimately killed. Fatal scenario. So while it's good to see robust legislation passed, I principally think that just death penalty is wrong. I think that India's making the right steps in empowering women to be part of the legal process.
All right, we're going to go to our last topic in this segment and weigh in with Dr. Rossi. In West Africa, we've all heard about the Ebola virus. 86 people are now confirmed dead because of the virus. Now, Ebola is one of the world's deadliest viruses. 90% of those infected will die, and there is no vaccination. What we know is that it spreads in the blood and shuts down the immune system, causing fever, headache, and muscle pain. Several countries have now closed their borders, and one plane flying in from Paris was quarantined. Doctors Without Borders is calling the outbreak an epidemic of magnitude never before seen. Dr. Rossi, this is just spreading fear throughout Africa and certainly the world as well.
Yes, and what I say here is psychologists usually associate fear with flight. You know, as humans, we try to get away from fearful situations. However, in this case, where do they go? Where do they flee to? So they can't just leave the country. So I'm concerned about the social psychology here and mob-like behavior. And what I would say to the leaders in West Africa is that what they really need to do is have the best, most specific and detailed press conferences every day and about what they're doing, specifically what they're doing, and they need to have outreach into the communities, whether it's microphones or megaphones going through the communities, highlighting what they're specifically doing for this outbreak so that they can assure the people as best as possible. They need to take those steps. It's not a time to be a generalist here. They need to be very specific and concrete.
No, and it's a wonderful point there, Dr. Bart. One of the reasons why we did bring up the Ebola virus and why we thought it was so important to talk about is that, of course, Fresh Outlook and TV is obviously seen in Africa, and any word that we can do to get the word out, obviously, is very important. So communication is key, as many of the doctors over there are battling this disease right now. We're going to take a short break, everyone, but there's much more coming up, including a look at some of the domestic issues here in the U.S. Don't go away.